Jungkook is humiliated for his shabby clothes, but the crowd falls silent when Taehyung embraces him on the main stage and calls him beloved little brother. What just happened? Hey, do you think this is a stage for beggars? Harsh laughter echoed through the grand hall, packed with thousands of spectators. A spotlight illuminated a lone figure standing at the center of the stage, a young man in a worn-out gray hoodie, ripped jeans, and shoes that were barely holding together. Jungkook stood there, frozen, his gaze locked onto the well-dressed man who had just hurled the insult. From the VIP section, murmurs spread among the distinguished guests, some even chuckling quietly. Cameras from every angle zoomed in, capturing Jungkook's expression, his clenched jaw, his fists tightening at his sides, but most of all, the deep hurt in his eyes. Behind him, a massive LED screen still displayed his name. Jungkook, special performance. But now, the audience was more focused on his appearance than the performance they had come to see. Just 3 minutes ago, everything was fine. Jungkook had walked onto the stage with confidence. But before he could even speak, someone from the front row, a well-known businessman with a condescending smirk, stood up and made a sharp remark. "I can't believe it. Wasn't he once a trainee under a major company? Look at him now, like a lost vagabond." That was all it took. Now, every eye was on him, waiting for his reaction. Jungkook swallowed hard. His heart pounded, not from fear, but from anger he struggled to contain. Just as he was about to respond, someone in the VIP section rose from his seat. His steps were calm, but his gaze was piercing. Kim Taehyung, he walked toward the stage, past the guests who now held their breath. Without hesitation, Taehyung pulled Jungkook into a firm embrace. One hand rested on the back of Jungkook's neck, as if transferring something deeper than mere protection. Then, in a voice rich with emotion, he spoke. "Jungkook, my beloved little brother." The hall, once filled with mockery, fell into dead silence. Jungkook froze in the embrace. "Little brother?" A ripple of murmurs spread through the audience. Reporters, who had initially been seeking scandal, now scrambled to refocus their cameras on Taehyung, but Taehyung didn't care. Gently, he patted Jungkook's back before turning to face the stunned crowd. His sharp eyes locked onto the man who had insulted Jungkook. "I think we all know who should really be ashamed here." And with that one sentence, the world seemed to flip upside down. Did he just say, "My beloved little brother"? Murmurs spread like wildfire among the audience. Journalists fumbled with their cameras, trying to capture the tension crackling in the air. Taehyung stood firm, his arms still draped protectively over Jungkook's shoulders. His eyes, dark and unreadable, locked onto the man who had mocked Jungkook just moments ago. Jungkook, still frozen in place, felt his heartbeat thunder in his ears. His mind was a storm, shame, anger, confusion, twisting together into something he couldn't name. He wanted to push Taehyung away, to say he didn't need saving. But at the same time, standing under his Hyung's protection felt safe. A heavy silence filled the venue. No one dared to breathe too loudly. The man who had insulted Jungkook, a wealthy executive with a reputation for arrogance, cleared his throat. He forced a smile, but the sweat on his temple betrayed him. "I didn't mean to offend, of course." He said, attempting damage control. "I was just surprised. It's not every day you see a performer dressed so casually." Taehyung let out a low chuckle, but there was no humor in it. Casually. He echoed, tilting his head. Is that what you call it?" Jungkook clenched his fists. He could feel the weight of 1,000 stares drilling into him. It wasn't supposed to be like this. This night, this stage was supposed to be his chance. A moment to prove himself again. Instead, he had been humiliated in front of everyone. But before he could say anything, Taehyung's grip tightened around his shoulder. It was almost imperceptible, but Jungkook understood. Let me handle this. Taehyung turned to the audience, his voice steady and unwavering. Tell me something. He said. What defines a performer? Their clothes? Their wealth? Or their talent? A ripple of discomfort spread through the crowd. Some people averted their gazes. Others shifted in their seats. Jungkook swallowed hard. He knew what Taehyung was doing. He was shifting the focus, forcing them to see beyond the surface. Taehyung stepped forward, addressing the audience directly now. Underscore, Jungkook stands here tonight because he has something no amount of money can buy. Raw talent. And if any of you doubt that, underscore, he turned back to Jungkook, his gaze filled with quiet determination. Underscore, then let him prove you wrong. Underscore, Jungkook's breath hitched. Taehyung was giving him an out, a way to reclaim his dignity. Slowly, Jungkook lifted his gaze. He could still feel the echoes of humiliation burning under his skin, but Taehyung's words had ignited something else, defiance. If they wanted to judge him, fine, but they would do so after they heard him sing. He stepped forward, the microphone cool against his palm. The crowd held its breath as the first notes of the instrumental filled the room. And then Jungkook sang. His voice, raw and unwavering, cut through the tension like a blade. Every note carried the weight of his struggle, his pain, his resilience. The audience, once so quick to laugh, now sat in stunned silence. When the last note faded into the air, the room remained still. Then, as if breaking free from a spell, someone started clapping. Then another, and another, until the entire venue erupted into thunderous applause. Jungkook stood there, his chest rising and falling, sweat trickling down his temple. Taehyung smiled, a quiet look of pride in his eyes. Underscore, you see? Underscore, he murmured, just loud enough for Jungkook to hear. Underscore, they can't ignore you now. Underscore, Jungkook exhaled, his lips twitching into a small, almost disbelieving smile. For the first time that night, he felt like he truly belonged. The applause still echoed in Jungkook's ears as he walked off the stage. His heart pounded, not from fear, but from the raw energy still coursing through his veins. He had done it. He had turned humiliation into triumph. But why didn't he feel victorious? Taehyung followed him backstage, his usual calm demeanor unchanged. The moment they were out of the public eye, Jungkook turned to him. Hyung, why did you do that? Taehyung raised an eyebrow. Do what? Call me your beloved little brother. In front of everyone, Taehyung exhaled slowly, his gaze unreadable. Because it's true, Jungkook frowned. Taehyung had always been protective, but this was different. There was something deeper behind his words, something Jungkook couldn't quite grasp. Before he could push further, a voice cut through the air. That was quite a performance. Both turned to see a man leaning against the wall, arms crossed, dressed in a sleek black suit. His expression held an unsettling mix of amusement and calculation. Jungkook stiffened. He recognized him immediately. Kang Ji-hyun, CEO of Star One Entertainment. A man with a reputation as ruthless as he was powerful. You managed to turn an embarrassment into a standing ovation. Impressive, Ji-hyun said, his lips curving into a smirk. But let's be honest, Jungkook. You don't belong here. Jungkook's jaw tightened. Taehyung stepped forward, his presence instantly commanding. Careful with your words, Mr. Kang. Ji-hyun chuckled. Relax, Taehyung. I'm only stating the obvious. Look at him. He gestured toward Jungkook's worn-out clothes. This isn't the golden boy of the industry anymore. This is someone who's been cast aside, forgotten. Jungkook clenched his fists. Ji-hyun took a step closer, lowering his voice. But I can change that. Jungkook frowned. What are you talking about? Ji-hyun smiled, his voice smooth like silk. Come work for me. Star One could use someone like you. Raw talent, a tragic fall from grace. People love a redemption story. He glanced at Taehyung, and without the burden of certain distractions, you might shine even brighter. Jungkook felt Taehyung tense beside him. He's not interested, Taehyung said, his voice cold. Ji-hyun chuckled again, as if amused. Let him speak for himself. Jungkook hesitated. There was no denying Ji-hyun's offer was tempting. Star One was one of the most powerful companies in the industry. With their backing, he could. Know something about this felt wrong. He met Ji-hyun's gaze. I don't need your help. Ji-hyun's smirk faltered for a split second before he laughed. Suit yourself. But remember, Jungkook, the industry doesn't forgive. And it definitely doesn't forget. With that, he turned and disappeared into the crowd. Jungkook exhaled sharply. Taehyung placed a hand on his shoulder. "You did the right thing." Jungkook wanted to believe that, but deep inside, he couldn't shake the feeling. This was far from over. Jungkook woke up the next morning to chaos. His phone was flooded with messages. News articles. Headlines. Jungkook from star to stray. Can he make a comeback? Kim Taehyung's public display of affection. A brotherhood or a cover-up? Rival CEO offers Jungkook a lifeline. Why did he refuse? Jungkook groaned, rubbing his face. Of course, the media had twisted everything. They always did. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. Taehyung held up his phone. "You've seen the news." Jungkook nodded. Taehyung sighed, sitting across from him. "They won't stop Jungkook. Jihyun, he doesn't like being refused. He'll come after you again." Jungkook looked up. "You think he'll try something?" Taehyung's jaw clenched. "I don't think." "I know." A chill ran down Jungkook's spine. He had just made a powerful enemy, and the game had only just begun. The storm came faster than Jungkook expected. Just a day after the media frenzy, he woke up to a series of missed calls from his former manager. Then, a message flashed across his screen. "Check the news." Now, Jungkook's stomach twisted as he clicked the link. Jungkook exposed. The dark secret behind his disappearance. His blood ran cold. The article was filled with carefully crafted lies, claims that he had been kicked out of his former agency due to behavioral issues, that he had a history of reckless spending and gambling, that he had cut ties with friends and mentors. Jungkook's hand shook. None of it was true, but the public wouldn't know that. They only believed what was written in front of them. A knock on his door made him flinch. "Jungkook, open up." "Taehyung." Jungkook swallowed hard before unlocking the door. Taehyung stepped inside, his phone in hand. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes, they burned with something dangerous. "It's Jihyun, Taehyung said without preamble. He's pulling strings. Jungkook let out a shaky breath. "How do you know?" Taehyung handed him his phone. On the screen was a leaked email thread between Star One executives. "The first phase has begun. By next week, he'll have no choice but to accept our offer." Jungkook clenched his fists. "They want to destroy me." Taehyung met his gaze. "No, they want to own you." A heavy silence filled the room. Jungkook had spent his entire life fighting to prove himself. He had endured harsh training, sleepless nights, endless criticism. But this was different. This was war, and he wasn't sure he was ready for it. The night was suffocatingly quiet. Jungkook sat in the dimly lit apartment, his mind a battlefield of anger, confusion, and fear. The article had already gone viral. His name was being dragged through the mud, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Taehyung paced across the room, his jaw clenched. "We need to counter this." Jungkook scoffed. "And say what? That's all a lie? You know how this works, Hyung? The public doesn't care about the truth. They just want a scandal." Taehyung exhaled sharply. He knew Jungkook was right. Suddenly, Jungkook's phone buzzed. A new message, unknown number, come to the Star One building. "Midnight. I have proof that can clear your name." Jungkook's heart skipped a beat. "Hyung," he said slowly, showing the message to Taehyung. Taehyung's brows furrowed. "It's a trap." Jungkook swallowed hard. "What if it's not?" A long silence. Then Taehyung exhaled, "Fine, but I'm coming with you." Midnight, Star One building, the hallways were dark. The only sound was the faint hum of the air conditioning. Jungkook's footsteps were quiet as he walked past the rows of empty offices. Taehyung followed closely behind him, his entire body tense, ready for anything. Then, bang, the door behind them slammed shut. The lights flickered on. Jungkook spun around, his pulse spiking to a shadow, stepped forward from the darkness. "You shouldn't have come." Jungkook's breath caught in his throat. "No," he whispered, because standing there, smirking as if this was all a game, was someone he once called a friend. Jungkook's pulse roared in his ears. The man standing before him, the one who had lured him here, who had betrayed him, was someone he never expected. Jimin, Jimin, his former best friend, stood with his hands tucked into the pockets of his sleek black coat. His expression was unreadable, but there was something chilling in the way he tilted his head, watching Jungkook as if he were a pawn in a game. Took you long enough. Taehyung stepped forward, shielding Jungkook slightly. His voice was low, dangerous. What the hell is this, Jimin? Jimin let out a soft chuckle. You should have taken the offer, Jungkook. It would have been so much easier that way. Jungkook's breath hitched. What are you talking about? Jimin sighed, almost as if he were disappointed. You still don't get it, do you? He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. Star One doesn't just want you, Jungkook. They need you. And if you won't come willingly, they'll break you. The realization crashed into Jungkook like a tidal wave. You're working for them. Jimin didn't deny it. Instead, he smirked. It's not personal. It's survival. Jungkook felt his stomach churn. Survival? You're my friend, Jimin. We built everything together. How could you? Because I know how this world works. Jimin's voice rose, his smirk twisting into something bitter. You think talent is enough? You think hard work matters? No. Power matters. Connections matter. And if you don't pick the winning side, he shrugged, you get left behind. Jungkook's hands clenched into fists. Taehyung's voice was sharp as ice. So you sold your soul to Jihyun. Jimin's eyes flickered. For a moment, just a moment, something like regret passed over his face. But it was gone as quickly as it came. I did what I had to do. Jungkook took a shaky breath. And now what? He asked. You're going to force me to sign with them? Jimin didn't answer. Instead, he stepped aside, revealing two large men in suits standing by the door. Jungkook's blood turned cold. This wasn't just a warning. This was an ambush. Jungkook's breath came fast and shallow. The two suited men blocking the exit looked like professionals. Broad shoulders, stone-cold expressions, the kind of people trained to make someone disappear without a trace. Jimin stood between them, his hands still casually in his pockets, but his eyes held a silent warning. Don't make this harder than it needs to be, Jungkook. Taehyung shifted beside him, his stance low and tense, like a predator ready to strike. His voice was calm, but Jungkook could hear the underlying rage. If you think we're just going to stand here and let this happen, you're dumber than I thought, Jimin. Jimin exhaled through his nose, almost looking tired. I didn't want it to be this way. Then walk away, Jungkook snapped. You don't have to do this. Jimin's jaw tightened. Yes, I do. The two men took a step forward, and then all hell broke loose. The fight. Taehyung moved first. Fast, he lunged at the man closest to the door, catching him off guard with a sharp elbow to the ribs. The man grunted, stumbling back, but the second bodyguard was already moving toward Jungkook. Jungkook barely had time to react before a heavy fist came swinging at his face. He ducked, instinct kicking in, and drove his knee up into the man's stomach. The impact sent a shock through his leg, but the guy barely flinched. Shit. Taehyung grabbed the first man by the collar and slammed him against the wall. Jungkook move. Jungkook didn't hesitate. He spun and kicked the second man's knee, making him falter for just a second, enough time for him to break into a sprint toward the door. But just as he reached for the handle, a hand grabbed his wrist. Jimin, don't do this, Jungkook. Jungkook met his eyes. For a split second, they were just two old friends again. Two kids who had trained together, dreamed together, but that moment shattered when Jimin tightened his grip. You won't win. Jungkook gritted his teeth. Watch me. With a burst of strength, he yanked his arm free and shoved Jimin backward. Jimin stumbled, just enough for Jungkook to throw open the door. Taehyung, let's go. Taehyung landed one last punch, knocking his opponent off balance before darting after Jungkook. They sprinted down the hallway, alarms blaring behind them. Jungkook could hear footsteps, more security coming. They needed to get out fast. The leap of faith, they could burst through an emergency exit, finding themselves on the rooftop. The city stretched below, neon lights glowing against the midnight sky. Jungkook's eyes darted around. No way down, no time to think. Then he saw a building, just a few meters across. Taehyung followed his gaze. No way. It's our only shot. The door behind them slammed open in more time. Jungkook took a deep breath and jumped. The wind roared in Jungkook's ears as he flew through the air. For a split second, everything slowed. The city lights blurred below, the rush of adrenaline surging through his veins, the weightlessness of the jump. Then, thud. His feet hit the rooftop of the next building. His knees buckled, rolling into the impact, his palms scraping against the rough concrete. His heart pounded wildly, but he was alive. That a second later, another thud. Taehyung landed beside him, stumbling but regaining his balance. That was insane, Taehyung gasped. Jungkook didn't answer. He was already looking back. On the opposite rooftop, Jimin stood at the ledge. Their eyes met across the gap, a silent challenge burning between them. Jimin didn't jump. He just stared. Then, without a word, he turned and disappeared back into the building. Jungkook exhaled sharply, his chest tight with something he couldn't name. The chase isn't over. Taehyung grabbed his arm. Come on, we need to move. They hurried down a fire escape, their bodies aching from the fight, lungs burning from the run. By the time they reached the alleyway below, the street was eerily quiet. Jungkook leaned against the brick wall, trying to catch his breath. He let us go. Jungkook murmured. Taehyung shot him a look. He didn't let us go. He knows we have nowhere to hide. Jungkook wiped the sweat from his brow. So what now? Taehyung pulled out his phone and checked the messages. His expression darkened. Now, we go underground. Jungkook frowned. What does that mean? Taehyung met his gaze, his eyes hard. I know someone who can help us fight back. But if we do this, there's no turning back. Jungkook clenched his fists. Then let's end this before they end me. The city never truly slept. Even in the dead of night, neon signs flickered, car horns blared in the distance, and the hum of unseen dangers lurked in every alley. Jungkook followed Taehyung through the dimly lit back streets, his hoodie pulled low over his face. His body ached from the fight, but the fire inside him burned brighter than ever. Who are we meeting? Jungkook finally asked. Taehyung didn't look back. Someone who knows how to take down men like Jihyun. Jungkook frowned. And we could trust them? Taehyung hesitated. We don't have a choice. Jungkook swallowed hard. That wasn't exactly comforting. The underground connection. They arrived at an old, abandoned nightclub. The neon sign above the door flickered, barely holding on to its last bit of light. Taehyung knocked 3 times. Silence. Then, a soft click. The door creaked open, revealing a dark hallway. Jungkook followed Taehyung inside, his senses on high alert. The air smelled like dust and cigarette smoke. The faint bass of music thumped from somewhere below. We're here. A woman sat at the center of the room, illuminated by the dim glow of multiple computer screens. Her sharp eyes flicked up from her keyboard, scanning them both with the precision of a hunter. So, you finally brought him. Jungkook tensed. You know me? The woman smirked. Jungkook, the fallen star. Of course I do. The whole world's watching you crash. Taehyung sighed. Lena, cut the theatrics. Can you help us or not? Lena leaned back at her chair, studying Jungkook like he was a puzzle. Depends. Are you ready to burn everything down? Jungkook met her gaze. If it means taking back my life? Yes. Lena's smirk widened. Then let's get started.